What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Do You Have a Moment? I know it's been a long time since the last episode, and I apologize. I've been working on a lot of other projects, but let's get into it. And so, the start of this episode, I just have one question, and that is, do you have a moment to talk about the world of Warcraft? Now, this episode isn't going to just be talking about the game itself and like how the game plays and the fun and all that kind of stuff, but it's actually going to have to do more with characters in World of Warcraft, specifically one character, one very specific character in Warcraft right now, and that is, of course, Anduin Wrynn. Now, Anduin Wrynn is a very interesting character in video gaming, and I actually say that legitimately because he is a character that, as someone who has played the game for 20 years now, you have actually seen him grow from a kid, literally a toddler, not toddler, but from a kid to a full-grown young adult. And so it's interesting to actually have played through a game where you can actually experience and see someone in that aspect and watch them grow and watch them progress and stuff like that. Now, to start things off, Anduin Wrynn, with the community, always kind of had like a negative aspect to him. Everyone was just like, oh, he's just a whiny crybaby. Oh, he's all about peace and love in a world called, World of Warcraft in Azeroth. And they were always just like, oh, he's the world of friendship craft. And it's true. Like, a part of his character is all about trying to find peace and tranquility and middle ground and trying to fix, the conflicts that existed on the planet. But it's because of those experiences that what he has become now is actually very, very interesting. And I actually have to admit that Anduin Wrynn is probably one of my favorite characters from the World of Warcraft series because of that growing. Now, with the new expansion coming out this year, at BlizzCon last year, they released a cinematic showing a grizzled Anduin Wrynn who's down and broken and literally on the edge of a nervous collapse, just being a broken man. And of course, a lot of people, really liked the cinematic. I will say a lot of people liked it more than didn't like it. But you had those usual Twitch streamers, the Twitch bros, who can't shed a single tear for any kind of situation because that makes you not manly, who are just like, oh, he's such a little whiny crybaby, blah, 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 blah. And so that's what this episode is going to be all about. Is I actually just want to sit here and break down Anduin Wrynn as a character and basically show you why it's okay for him to be a broken man now coming into this new expansion and what that means going forward for him, because there's a lot of difference between this
stand as one for the Alliance
and this.
I'm not that person anymore. I have no light.
So, let's get into it. So, Anduin Wrynn was born of the royal families of Stormwind. This was after the Third War, I believe, against the Orcs and stuff like that, where Stormwind was actually about being rebuilt. This was after King Lane was assassinated by Garona Half-Organ, and Varian Wrynn basically took over as the new King of Stormwind. And him and his wife, Tiffin Wrynn, had a child and they named him Anduin Wrynn. And they actually named him Anduin after a great noble warrior that was part of the Stormwind army named Anduin Lothar. And so he already was carrying on a name that was a legacy name that meant something. And so already from the beginning, it was kind of rough. Well, needless to say, at the time in Stormwind, they had a whole group of masons that were helping rebuild the entire place. And after they finished rebuilding the place, there was actually a conflict that came up where they weren't getting paid for rebuilding all of Stormwind, the entire kingdom and all that stuff after the war. And so they kind of broke off into a splinter group known as the Defias Brotherhood. And the Defias Brotherhood basically waged war against Stormwind, particularly the noble families of Stormwind, the rich noble families that were refusing to pay them for the masonry work. And this led to a riot inside of Stormwind where the Defias Brotherhood basically led the charge, and everyone got all riled up, and there was stones being thrown, and everyone was trying to break into the keep and all that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, Anduin at this time was only 2 years old, like literally a child, like an infant. And in this riot, unfortunately, the sad thing is that his mother, Tiffin, actually ended up getting killed. There was someone in the riot that basically chucked a stone, a large stone. It hit her in the head, and it killed her. So already, Anduin not off to a good start, losing one of his parents when he was barely an infant. Now, after that, this also created a problem with Anduin Wrynn, his father. You know, before he was kind of close to his dad for those first 2 years, but then after the death of the mother and the wife, his dad started to grow separated from him. He started to grow distant. He was focused more on war and fighting the battles that were threats to Stormwind, and kind of didn't really spend time with his son. His son found more connection with like the butlers and the waitresses and those that are, you know, taking care of him basically while his dad was dealing with all these diplomatic things. It was around this time too that another noble, what's the word I'm looking for? Advisor, I guess, would be the word, came in to help with Stormwind's noble situation in crisis, and that's of course Lady Prester, who at this time we didn't really know much about her, but we knew that she was just trying to help. We'll see how that turns out later. But then what happened was, after a couple of years, I think it was about 5 years or so, went by, and Anduin Wrynn went missing as the King of Stormwind. So again, now, poor little Anduin, he lost his mother and his father went missing, and he's just by himself. And during that time, he was basically named the King of Stormwind until he came back. So he had an advisor on his side, known as Bolvar Fordragon, who was a great, interesting character. I actually really, really liked that character. And yeah, they basically were just running Stormwind with a, like 8 to 10-year-old kid in charge. Later we found out exactly what had happened to Anduin Wrynn, because he eventually came back. But the weird thing about it is that when he came back, he wasn't quite the warrior, that he was before. He was actually kind of cowardly, and he was starting to make really weird decisions and choices and all that kind of stuff ruling the kingdom. And everyone was kind of scratching their heads like, well, what's going on with him? Like, what's different here? And it was discovered a little bit later that another version of Varian actually washed up onto the shores of Kalandor, across the ocean. And so there were two Varians, and the one that washed up on the shores of Kalandor was basically captured by the orcs and forced to be in their gladiatorial arenas and fights, where he kind of built up a legacy of being known as Logash, the warrior inside the orc encampments. But of course, since at this time, obviously the orcs and the humans, they weren't really in communications, and so there wasn't a lot of information on it, so no one of Stormwind actually knew about Logash in the second half. After a little while, the cowardly Anduin Wrynn actually also went missing. He was actually sent to Theramore, and on his way there was actually kidnapped and thrown into a cell on an island off of the coast of Theramore. So again, we were back to Bolvar and Anduin and Lady Prester being in charge of Stormwind. Well, it was revealed during this time by Windsor, a great quest from Classic, that Lady Prester was actually the Black Dragon Onyxia, and she had actually planned this entire system. She planned all these problems. She was the one who was responsible for splitting Varian from one person into two people using her magic, and she was basically just trying to tear the Stormwind house down from the inside. She was pretending to be a noble and was basically the one who caused the Defias Brotherhood to be formed and attack the city, because she was actually the one who said that they weren't going to pay them. So she was behind all that stuff. They eventually stop her. They break her out. She goes back to her lair. And it was around this time that Varian's two halves actually both break out, and they both find themselves drawn to Onyxia's lair. And while they're there, they're actually fighting her together, two different halves of one person. And in her fire breath, which was the magical properties that she used to split them, it actually reforged them back into a single person, combining the two weapons that each of them had into the weapon known as Charlemagne. Now, I know you're probably wondering, I thought the show was going to be about Anduin. Why have I been talking about Varian for so much? And it's actually important to know about Varian's legacy and that stuff too, and where his blade Charlemagne actually came from. So, going forward, after Varian slayed Onyxia, he went back to Stormwind and was back in charge. But again, you would think, oh, this would be great. He's back with his son and all that kind of stuff. No. Because now he has the combined memories of the two halves of himself and the memories of being a gladiatorial, fighter, and being in the arenas, in the orc encampments and stuff like that, basically turned him into a very harsh person and a very racist person against the orcs. So, yeah, he was not the same guy that Anduin remembered as his dad. At this point, Anduin was about, I think, 11 or 12 years old. And the next couple of years were about to get really bad for Anduin. So after his father returned, they did a campaign to go attack Northrend to try to stop the Lich King. The orcs sent their guys, the humans sent their guys, and they actually get to the Wrathgate, where they go to fight the Lich King right there and then. And Bolvar Fordragon, the advisor that used to be in charge of Anduin and the close friend of Anduin's, led the charge. Well, in this situation, Putris, who was an undead Forsaken that was part of the Horde, basically betrayed everyone and created a plague that would basically wipe out both living and dead creatures. And he was planning to use it to take out all of the Alliance, all the Horde, and the Lich King and his forces all at once. Bolvar unfortunately fell during this time, which of course was for Anduin, learning that your close advisor and your good friend that watched over you for all those years was dead. Probably broke him a little bit. They didn't really go into it and like talk about details with it, but you gotta expect that already hurt. So he's already lost his mom. He lost his dad. His dad came back, but he was a different person and he wasn't close to Anduin anymore. And then he lost his close advisor, who was a good friend. It doesn't stop there, because after the events of Wrath of the Lich King, where we defeat the Lich King and we return back to normal, the planet of Azura starts getting a little shaky and the elements are starting to get a little wacko. And so at this time, Varian is just like, okay, I got to deal with other stuff. So he sends Anduin to Ironforge, to the Dwarven kingdom of Ironforge. And there, Anduin actually became closer friends with the leader of the dwarves, Magni Bronzebeard. And Magni, dwarves being of Earth and being, down inside, is just like, I think I know of a way to communicate, because like the old earthen spells and scripts and stuff like that talk about a way to commune, because as we learn in the Warcraft history is that all humans and all gnomes and all dwarves and stuff like that actually came from Titan creations. They were basically mechanical creatures or made of rock and stuff like that. And eventually they got hit by the old god curse of flesh, which gave them fleshy, parts that made them become living creatures. And so they still had a history of being connected to the earth through that earthen thing. So Magni was just like, okay, I'm gonna go try to talk to the planet. I'm gonna go down there and I'm gonna read this ritualistic tablet and try to see if I can commune with the planet to see what's going on. Well, he reads the tablet. After becoming close to Anduin again, he gives Anduin actually a small hammer, to be like, oh, these will help you on your, priestly, lessons and all that kind of stuff. And Magni reads this script, and it turns him into crystal. So Anduin now lost his second close advisor buddy, Magni, to this situation. Anduin during this time then, of course, went on to become close friends with the Tauren leader, Bane Bloodhoof, who took over after his father passed away in an unfortunate fight with Garrosh Hellscream in the Horde. And he actually helps Bane reclaim Thunderbluff, the capital city of the Tauren, and he becomes really close with them. So, of course, Anduin during this time is just like, okay, there could still be some peace between the Alliance and the Horde. Well, then the Cataclysm happens. And the Cataclysm is when Deathwing, the Black Dragon, basically burst out of the planet to the point where it created a shattering explosion that basically rocked the entire world, destroying kingdoms, causing floods, causing earthquakes, causing volcanoes to erupt. It was just chaos, madness. So they did eventually stop him, and because Anduin didn't do too much during the Cataclysm, but they ended up stopping Deathwing at that time. So now that Deathwing was quelled, they were just like, okay, what's the next step? And of course, Anduin's just like, oh, hey, Jaina, his as he calls it, the aunt. It wasn't really his aunt, but it's kind of his aunt. And she runs Theramore. She's the legacy of Theramore, and she's the leader of Theramore. But she was always trying to find peace between the Alliance and the Horde, too, becoming close friends with the Orc leader Thrall during the Third War and the war against the Burning Legion. So he was like through his aunt, and he's like, oh, hey, I'm friends with Bane, you're friends with Thrall. We can make this work. We can have peace and all that stuff. Well, Thrall, during the Cataclysm, kind of disappeared on his own adventure to go try to quell the elements and stuff like that. So he put Garrosh Hellscream in charge, who was a hardcore warrior and like orc who was bound to his honor as an orc and stuff like that. And he ended up starting to push against the Alliance in Kalimdor, like in the settlements that they had nearby, one of those being Theramore. So he launched an attack on Theramore, and of course, they're still trying to be like, hey, Bane, come help us, or hey, Thrall, come help us, and just trying to make things work. And then Garrosh does the unthinkable and basically drops a mana bomb on Theramore, which is the equivalent of a nuke in real life. It basically blows up the entire city and just disintegrates the entire thing. So now again, Jaina, his aunt, who was once a kind, caring person and was trying to look into peace, now became bloodthirsty and just wanted all the Horde dead because they basically wiped out her kingdom and killed her friend, Ronan, and a couple of her other, students and stuff like that. So it was just a mess, going forward. And this is where things just get so crazy for Anduin. So he basically, up to this point, every decision he's made has either led to advisors going away or disappearing or a city getting nuked. It was crazy. So on a ride back from Kalimdor to Eastern Kingdoms, he gets attacked by the Horde and he goes into this misty island place, his boat does, and he crashes onto a mysterious island that's there. There is, of course, eventually we find out the land of Pandaria. And Pandaria it was basically shrouded in mist because it was supposed to be hidden away from the rest of the world because they didn't want people to interact with it, because the Pandaren people basically figured out how to find zen and peace in themselves so that all their negative emotions just disappeared. And the reason for that was because the Shah were basically dark whispers of the old gods that manifested off of negative emotion. But now that the Alliance got there and the Horde was coming there, they were basically bringing war to the shores of Pandaria, and the Shah were coming back. So we go to Pandaria. Varian sends us to Pandaria to go find his son. We eventually do find his son. He's been learning a lot about, being calm and peaceful and all that kind of stuff. But Garrosh gets there and he's just like, hey, I can plunder this place for weapons and use them in this war so I can wipe out the Alliance. He finds this thing called the Divine Bell, which basically he was going to use to release the Shah energies against the Alliance and basically turn everyone into grotesque Shah creatures. And Anduin actually found the counter to that by creating a mallet that basically would reverse the powers of the Divine Bell and use it more in a power of light. Well, once he does this, Garrosh does not like that. He tries to reason with Garrosh to tell him, hey, you don't have to do this, And Garrosh smashes the bell and it crushes Anduin. So Anduin almost dies here. He doesn't. He eventually gets saved and he gets taken to a little inn where he recovers over time. So this poor kid, again, now at this point, maybe age 14, 15, has already been through so much stuff. But it keeps going on. While he was in the inn recovering, he became close friends to the newly born Black Dragon, Rathian, who was an uncorrupted Black Dragon after his, father, Deathwing, and Onyxia, and all those Black Dragons that were corrupted basically were wiped out. He was the last remaining uncorrupted Black Dragon. And his whole goal was to protect Azeroth at any cost, like his father was supposed to do. But he keeps that as an actual thing where it's like, he will defend it at any cost, doesn't matter who he has to sacrifice to do it. So he foresees that the Burning Legion will return someday, and he's talking about how, if the Alliance wins, then we'll have one army that everyone can fight under, or if Garrosh wins, we'll have one army that everyone can fight the Burning Legion under. So he's trying to play the war, both sides, kind of a really snooty thing, and Anduin doesn't really like it. Well, eventually the Alliance and a couple of Horde members do wipe out Garrosh. They stop him, they stop his reign of tyranny and all that stuff. And Rathian's all mad because even though they stopped him, they go back to being separate factions again. And he's like, you idiots! And so he gets all upset and he flies off. And Anduin's like, yeah, he's going to be crazy. So when they go to the trial for Garrosh, Anduin again is trying to appeal to Garrosh, being like, look, you can be better, you can be different, you can apologize, you can come back and we can make this world a peaceful place. But what ends up happening is Anduin on the last day goes down to Garrosh's cell to find it empty, and he gets knocked out in the back of the head and thrown into the jail cell by Rathian, because Rathian has a plan with the bronze dragon, Kairos Domo, who was going to use the Sands of Time to basically open a portal to an alternate universe and take Garrosh with him. And this alternate universe was Draenor, where the orcs were originally from, but it was in the past when the orcs were still massive. And they were basically going to build a new army of orcs to bring into the world to defend it from the Burning Legion. That's how crazy Rathian is. I will defend it, but I will wipe out everyone to make my army so I can defend it. So again, Anduin made friends with Rathian, got betrayed. Tried to reason with Garrosh, got crushed by a bell. It just kept going worse and worse. So in the alternate universe, the plan falls apart, but the orcs from that alternate universe wanted to come into our reality to claim it, because that's what they do. They like to conquer. And so that all happens, but incidentally, the funny thing is, in creating this alternate reality, Rathian actually created an alternate Gul'dan, who was the first one to make a deal with the with the Burning Crusade. He gets sent through the portal to our reality, where he's the one who opens the portal to let the Burning Legion attack again in Azeroth. So in a way, Wrathion, in time trying to prevent them from attacking, actually created the events that led up to them attacking. This is where everything for Anduin starts going downhill. His dad immediately goes to the Broken Shore to try to stop the portal and stop the Burning Legion right where it's happening. Him and the Horde, like all of the Alliance, all the Horde go and attack, and they get wiped out by the Burning Legion. Anduin Wrynn ends up staying behind to help his guys get away on the airship, getting Greymane and all the other people, and he actually ends up getting killed by Gul'dan. So in that friendship that Anduin made with Wrathion, it ended up leading to Wrathion creating the alternate reality, which created the alternate Gul'dan, which let the Burning Legion come in, which led to his own father's death. So now he has no parents. Probably now at the age of, I think he's like 17 or 18 at this point. And so he's made King of Stormwind again. And it's just like, he's like, what do I do? What do I do? We're in the middle of the war for the planet, and I'm now the King of Stormwind. How am I supposed to lead not just the humans, but all of the Alliance? And so he actually leaves the throne, he sneaks away, and you as the player actually help him sneak around and listen to people, like, talking about him, and all of them are just like, he can't do it, he's not his father, he's not good. So now he's feeling all down and upset, because he's just like, no one trusts me, no one thinks I can get it done. And he ends up, eventually going back to when we reclaim it, the place where his father died, and he's like, this is where my father died. And he picks up Charlemagne, his father's sword, and it ends up glowing back with the light, that he has it. He believes he can do it. So he ends up going back to being the king, and he's a good king. He's like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We end up defeating the Burning Legion, and now it's like a time of peace. Yes, finally, time of peace. Burning Legion's defeated. But no, because Sargeras, the giant titan, space Satan, basically stabbed the planet, which caused all this azurite, like this blood of the planet, to spew out, which is like really powerful stuff. And Sylvanas, the leader of the Horde, was basically collecting all of it. And he's like, why is she collecting all this? Well, shortly after that, Sylvanas basically commits genocide against the Night Elven people by burning down Teldrassil, killing everybody who was on, like, in the tree, and wiping out the capital city of the Night Elves. So it's like, he's just been put in charge of the Alliance, and genocide was immediately committed against them. This leads to the Fourth War. So he's like, gosh, just, can I get a moment of peace? He's like thrown into a war immediately once he takes charge of Stormwind. So here, I did miss one part. Before the burning of Teldrassil and the genocide, he did try to find another peace agreement between the undead and the humans, because they're from the same kingdom originally, where he was like, can the undead like meet their living relatives and like make peace and like maybe live together, and like that could be our bridge between the Alliance and the Horde. Well, when some of the undead actually tried to like run away to the Alliance, basically defect, Sylvanas got mad and basically slaughtered everyone at that gathering. So that was already another choice Anduin made to try to find peace, where a lot of people got killed because of that choice. Then the genocide of the Night Elves happened. Then after that, he made good friends with Sarfang, which was an orc who still believed in honor, and he's like, what Sylvanas is doing is not good. And so he helps Sarfang basically get a whole bunch of people together to go take on Sylvanas. And when they do, Sarfang ends up taking on Sylvanas one-on-one, and Sylvanas cheats in the Mak'gora, which is a battle to the death, and uses her dark magic to basically just kill Sarfang right out there. So again, another person he was trying to find and make friends with gets killed because of his actions. And it's just like, every choice that this poor kid has made has led to death and destruction. He's just trying to find the peace. People hate that he's like, oh, peace, peace, peace. But it's like, it's not like he's doing that and it's working. It keeps backfiring it, and that's what's slowly breaking him down as we get closer to the modern story and where we're going to be in the next expansion. So after they stop Sylvanas, at least they stop her. Everything's kind of at peace. The Alliance and the Horde are just like, okay, we'll stop fighting for now. Let's work together. Because then the old god N'Zoth gets released, and he starts plaguing people's minds and darkening their thoughts, and Anduin gets really affected by this. And when they're trying to figure out how to stop him, they actually go and get help from Wrathion, the guy whose choice literally led to his father's death. And in one of the greatest cinematics that I've ever seen, as soon as Wrathion walks in the entrance, Anduin like stands up and walks towards him, and Rathion's like, Anduin, it's been so long, and he just socks him in the face, like, and he's like, my father's dead because of you. And it's like, hey, he's got a point. I mean, at least he got that good punch in, like, onto Wrathion. So eventually we team up with Wrathion, we do help him, or we do get his help, and we stop N'Zoth. So now, okay, Sylvanas is taken care of, N'Zoth's taken care of, Anduin can finally breathe. He can't. Because Sylvanas decides to capture all the leaders of the Alliance and the Horde and take them to the afterlife. Because she has made a deal with the demon that lives in the afterlife, basically the actual, Satan, not space Satan, but different Satan, who lives in the Maw, which is basically HE double hockey stick. And she takes all of them there to basically torture them for endless amount of time, because the time that passes in the Maw is so much slower than the rest of reality. They could be there for months and months and months, but to us it would be just minutes. So this poor kid now is there. He's like 20, 21 at this point, and he's just being tortured endlessly. But he's starting to understand Sylvanas and actually tries to use her tricks against her. So he's like trying to manipulate her back and just be like, oh, you're just lost. You're just confused. You're just lashing out, all that kind of stuff. And she wants him to give up like she gave up. Like, just give up on the light. Just join us. Like, just give up. There's no point in trying. But he won't do it. So the jailer and Sylvanas end up actually using armor with runes on them to actually dominate Anduin's mind. And domination is different from mind control. Mind control is they actually control your mind and make you do stuff. Domination, they just control the body. They control your whole body, but you're still in there. You're still in the head. And this is where Anduin really starts to get messed up, because every single time he gets dominated by the armor and stuff like that, he's losing himself more and more and more. And he's freaking out about it. And eventually, we go in there and we fight and we defeat the jailer and we actually help free Anduin, and Anduin actually frees himself by remembering his father and Sarfang, and he actually is able to activate Charlemagne and split it into two blades like his father used to, and that frees him. But the thing that lingers with him that's really messing with him is that whenever he looks back on those memories while he was dominated, he gets chills. He feels like exhilaration, and he's like, but why is my mind feeling exhilaration remembering murdering and killing people while I was in control, and remembering it as a good thing, like a good feeling? And so he starts to question himself, being like, maybe I have these dark thoughts in me. Maybe I'm a problem. Maybe there's a huge issue here. And so he starts to lose faith in himself, and he doesn't even want to call on the light anymore as a priest, because he's like, I don't think it's going to answer me because of those dark thoughts. And Thrall actually went through a similar thing when he killed Garrosh back in Warlords of Draenor expansion, because he actually used the elements to kill Garrosh, and the elements actually started to doubt him because he misused their powers, and so he stopped using the elements because he feared that they wouldn't answer him. And so Thrall knowing that, and then now Anduin doing the same thing with the light, where he's like, I don't know what to do, like I'm just going to go out on my own. So he disappears. 3 years pass, to the next expansion, which is the expansion we're on now, Dragonflight, and we don't interact, we don't see Anduin at all. He's off on his own. He's running off on his own, doing his own thing, trying to figure things out. So another 3 years pass, and then another year and a half passes during this expansion. So now Anduin, he's like 25, 26. And that's where this cinematic comes in, right here, where Thrall comes to find him, and he's disheveled. He has a beard growing, his hair, he sliced it all off. He's, holding Charlemagne, and Charlemagne has no light glowing in it anymore. And he's just sitting there remembering like everything. And it's this moment, this harsh moment where he stands up and he points the sword at Thrall, and he's like, I'm not that person anymore. I have no light, not after what I've seen, not after what I've done. And a lot of people misconstrued that like, well, you were mind controlled. You didn't do anything. Why do you feel so bad about it? When he says that line, he's not just looking at when he was mind controlled. He's looking at every single choice that I have mentioned this entire video, and everything that he did, and every moment, and every bad decision, and every death, and every loss. That he's like, I'm not that person anymore. Not after what I've seen, not after what I've done. He is officially broken, and that to me makes him a great character. And moving forward, this next expansion is going to push his story forward as he tries to rebuild who he is. And I'm sorry, but that's not a one-dimensional character. That is a very deep, complex character who has gone through so much over the course of a 20-year story that we've all been able to experience, and I just can't get over it. Anduin Wrynn, one of the best characters in my opinion. I don't care what you Twitch bros think. He is so awesome. He deserves to be upset because he has been through everything. Anyways, I know that was a long one. Don't really have much time for a wrap up here. We have about a minute left, but I just want to thank you guys for watching this new episode of Do You Have a Moment? I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you understand more about Anduin Wrynn in the World of Warcraft series. And as always, guys, be ready for the next episode, and I'll see you guys later.